Hey Photo World, welcome back to another episode here on TakeandTalkPics.com. This is another episode from the former podcast. Please subscribe, hit that notification bell, and join the email list. Let's get to that 1,000 subscriber marker so that way I can add a new video every single week. Enjoy. TakeandTalkPics.com. This is Rob Kruger here on episode 33 with nature and wildlife photographer Juan Pons.
Everybody is doing like portraiture or cityscape or photojournalism, kind of stuff. And I'm the nature and wildlife picture.
Hey Photo World, today's featured guest is Juan Pons. Juan, are you ready to rock?
Absolutely. Always am.
Wonderful. I love hearing that. Juan is a nature and wildlife photographer based in Bangor, Maine, who is passionate about the conservation of our wildlife habitats and is a member of multiple organizations with that same focus. With over 20 years of experience, you can easily see the skills in his imagery is driven by the passion to conserve his subjects and their homes. Juan donates his work to nonprofit organizations with the preservation mission. Lastly, Juan has been published in countless magazines such as Sahara Magazine, American Photo, and The Independent, just to name a few. Juan, welcome to Take and Talk Pics.
Oh, thanks for having me, and I look forward to it.
Absolutely. It's a pleasure having you here, and it's just getting your story out there to Photo World, getting them inspired. Can you share a little bit more about yourself and what you do as a photographer?
Well, I don't know how deep you want me to go in that, but I'm originally from Puerto Rico. I've been living in the States for most of my adult life, and have been fortunate enough to be able to craft for myself, if you will, a lifestyle and a profession as a wildlife photographer. And for me, nature and wildlife, especially animals, are my passion. And, it's really what drives my photography first and foremost. And I've been very fortunate to be able to craft myself a profession, if you will, doing what I love the most.
That's awesome. And really, that's what most of Photo World is, striving for. And a lot of us just, we get that opportunity to say we get to do what we love for a living.
Right.
Some of it comes down to the business end of things and it gets a little difficult. But for the most part, no matter what job you do, there's always going to be work involved. And we do get to have a fraction of that time where it is about our passion. Can you share with Photo World a little bit of inspiration, something that keeps you motivated, a quote or a mantra that you have that you either live day to day by or run your business by?
Well, and this is really easy for me because for me, it's all about having fun, enjoying what you do. If you're not having fun at what you're doing, you gotta, reevaluate and think about it. I think you're doing something wrong, so to speak. I was, for a large part of my life, I was in the sort of the corporate rat race, if you will. I worked a lot in technology. I was very successful doing a lot of work in technology field, was CTO of a number of companies. In financially, that was great, but fulfillment-wise, it wasn't. I always had the photography in the background, and that was my passion. And a number of years ago, I was able to just leave all of that other stuff behind and concentrate on what I like. So I tell people, you got to do what you love. It's really, and have fun at it. Otherwise, I think you're not making the most of your time on this earth.
That's a good point. We get wrapped up in what we need to accomplish and we think we're stuck in, like you said, the rat race. But if we can get to a point where it's okay to leave the 9 to 5 to pursue what makes us happy, man, life gets a lot easier.
Absolutely.
It's just more fun.
A lot of other things fall into place.
Absolutely. Yeah. Can you share with Photo World what sparked your interest in photography enough to actually make that break away from corporate world and go out and pursue it as a career?
Well, I consider myself extremely fortunate in that in high school, I had an incredible photography teacher. And not only was I fortunate enough to have an incredible photography teacher, I was incredibly fortunate to have to go to a school that had a really good photography program. And I still stay in touch with my photography teacher. We became really good friends while we were in school, and every so often we sort of exchange emails. And she was really my inspiration to get into photography. Seriously, I was kind of dabbling, didn't really know what I was doing. But she instilled in us a great foundation for photography, what photography is all about, the importance of photography, not so much the nuts and bolts of it, because that's great and it's good to master the sort of nuts and bolts. But I think the hardest thing is for people to find, the inspiring parts of photography itself. And even what I call the softer side of photography, which is the composition and the light and all that kind of good stuff. The stuff that really makes photography, the technical stuff, the numbers, the pixels, the megapixels, the f-stops and whatnot. Those are great, but that's not what really makes photography. So, she's really what sparked my interest in photography. While I was going to college, I actually worked part-time as a photographer. I was the official school photographer, shooting a lot of work for the school itself, for the communications department. I also did a bunch of work with, which a lot of people don't know this because it's not something I talk about very often, but I did a lot of work for aspiring models. I did a lot of headshots and portfolios and things like that, just, to make money on the side. And then after college, my photography kind of went a little bit on the back burner. I was concentrating on my career, making money, moving up in the world, so to speak. And, but the nature part of my life always was tugging at me. It was always kind of saying, "Hey, you got to get out there." And I did. I spent a lot of time outdoors. And I don't know, maybe 10 years into that, out of photography, I really got back into it. Once I moved, I was living at the time in Boston, where I went to school, and then I moved to North Carolina. I was surrounded by wildlife and nature and whatnot, and that's really what reignited my love for photography. And I really went headlong into it. And not long after that, I don't know, 5, 6 years after that, is when digital photography started coming out in a significant way. For example, the first consumer level digital SLR, the Canon D30, not the 30D, the D30 was a 3 megapixel, $4,500 camera. And when that first came out, I bought that camera, and this is a true story. The day I bought that camera was the last day I shot film.
Wow.
I have not shot a single piece of film since then because I fell in love with it. And with my technical background, the digital stuff felt right in with me. And I started teaching digital photography. I started giving talks about digital photography. Remember, this is when digital photography was heresy.
Yeah.
People, I thought I was going to be chased out of some places with pitchforks because people were saying, this is not photography. This is computer stuff. This is, and really, just, for me, the photography part of it, even though I love photography, has always been secondary. It's really, my love has been the outdoors, nature, and the wildlife. And just photography allows me to have a much deeper connection to the wildlife and nature. And so that for me, although photography is my career, it's really secondary, if you will, to my love for the outdoors and wildlife.
Wow. That's a huge, wonderful story. I love it that you broke it down, the whole progression. And Photo World, I don't know if you have the same kind of story, but what I loved in there was once you did that digital camera, the day you bought it and made that investment, goodbye film. And
yes,
it was weird when I was doing film. I was saying, I'm never going digital. I will never do it. I love film. It was so great to develop it and do the printing. It was magical. And once I got to digital, I was like, yeah, I don't know if I'm ever going to do film again. So
right. Well, it's funny, when I first got the digital, I thought I'd do half digital, half film and whatnot, and then the time, and for years, because I did all my own printing myself and developing in black and white, and for color was really difficult. Mm-hmm. When I switched to color and I was using slides, I was scanning all my slides and bringing them into the computer and printing them. This is really, really early on in printing at home, and it was horrible. It was difficult. I mean, you went through almost a box of paper to get 2 or 3 good prints,
right?
Because you had to do so many experimentations and whatnot. Not like today.
Yeah.
Back then the color calibrators were thousands of dollars. $5,000 to buy a color calibrator in those days. Yeah. So it was really hard work. But like you said, it's just the magic of that. For me, the digital capture. When I was shooting film, even though I love shooting film, shooting Velvia and Provia slide film.
Oh yeah.
Which was beautiful work. When you were scanning that, you lost quite a bit in the scanning process, no matter how good of a scanner you had, because you were transferring from one medium to another. Some people say you were transferring, doing 3 transfers. You're going from real life to film, from film to digital. And then if you were printing, that was, even another step. Mm-hmm, mm-hmm. When you went digital, you took out one step. You took the film step. You were going from real life onto digital capture. And what you were getting, even though these were small files, 3 megapixels, the quality and the detail was just so incredible compared to scanned film.
Yeah, the megapixel conversation is fun these days with beginning
Right.
level people thinking there's something to it. I know my first camera, it wasn't an SLR, my first digital, but it was a Kodak Easy Share, and it was 3 megapixels, and I got some awesome stuff just playing around learning photography at the time. So I mean, megapixels, photo world, give it a rest. Just
Right.
if you need it for your industry, it makes sense, but you can make do. So Juan, with our businesses, because we do at the end of the day run a business and have to make a living, make an income, and have it work, there's ups and there's definitely downs. Can you recall a time where you had to learn the hard way, maybe a failure moment that didn't go so well?
Well, I think we all have those, right? And some you want to admit to, some you rather not, and then there's some in different aspects of it. I remember, one of my biggest revelations was when I was always a nature photographer. I did a lot of nature work. When I wanted to go to wildlife, I thought, oh, this is no big deal. I'll go to wildlife from nature. Well, no, it's not. Wildlife is incredibly difficult. It's one of probably the most difficult type of photography you can do because you can't control your subjects. You can't control the light. You can't control the environment. You have to learn to work with your subjects. So to me, that I consider that kind of my biggest learning moment in my ascent to doing wildlife work. From a business perspective, is realizing that a lot of people think, and I still get this, is like, oh man, you must love your life because you're out there shooting all the time. And I look at them like, yeah, if you're trying to run a business, your shooting time is 10% or less of that time. 80% of it is building your business. You have to be a good business person to begin with. Luckily for me, I did have that part of that in the background. It's not what I enjoy doing, but with my sort of previous life, my previous career, I do have quite a bit of business background. So, I know what I'm doing. Whether I like doing it or I do it as much as I should is a different story. But it's just learning that process is that, anything about making a living requires business experience and a business aptitude. If you don't have it, you're going to have a tough time at it.
Yeah, photo world, go get it. It's okay to take a business course or a marketing course and
Yes.
Just get a little bit of education to bring with you into the world of your photography, because it does play a huge part.
Well, first and foremost, you have to be a good business person before anything else, before you can be a good photographer. There's plenty, in the light, one of the things I like to say is that there's plenty of, so photographers out there that are incredibly successful,
right?
Because they're very good business people. They're not necessarily as good photographers. Some of the best photographers I've ever known or I've ever seen are not, professional photographers. They're amateur. They do it for the love of photography, but they know that they don't want to get on the business side of it.
Right.
So they're pretty smart from that perspective.
If they can swing it, yeah, I
Right,
kind of gets a little jealous here.
Well, the funny thing is, and I give a lot of talks around the country and workshops and whatnot. One of the biggest questions I always get is, how can I become a professional photographer? How can I do what you're doing? And I tell people, I give them, I'm not trying to discourage them, but I'm trying to give them a dose of reality. And I say to them, you got to really think hard whether this is something you want to do. For a lot of people, photography is an outlet. It's a way to relax. It's a way to get away from the real world pressures. If you take that one thing that's your love and it's your outlet and you turn that into your livelihood, you're giving up a little bit of that romanticism, if you will, about photography. Plus, now you're applying a pressure to what used to be your outlet to make a living at it.
Right.
And that's not for everybody. It is for a lot of people, but not for everybody. Taking something that gives you that outlet and now putting the pressure on it of having to make a living at it, having to put food on the table. So I tell people to really think hard whether this is something they want to do, and maybe just dabble in it first as opposed to jumping in, head first, and see if it works for them. See if there's something they want to do. Because, like we said, it's about 80% of it is about business experience, business know-how. 10% of it is photography, and the other 10% is just pure luck.
I like that. I've never heard the extra 10% there, but it's a good breakdown, and it makes sense that you do get in the right place at the right time or meet the right people.
Yes.
So,
right.
Juan, we have a wide range of photographers listening. Can you please share with Photo World one thing you think will lead to growth and success in their photography business, regardless of their current level today?
Well, I mean, this is to me super easy. It's loving what you do. It's having fun at what you do. If you don't, you know, if you don't love the type of photography that you do, you don't like what you're doing, and you don't have a passion for it, I believe it's going to show in your work. When you do have a passion and a love for the photography, your work's going to stand out over everybody else's. It just does this as a job. So to me, that's the most important thing. Before I got into being a professional, so to speak, quote unquote professional, um, I did a lot of. I was involved in a number of camera clubs in my area.
Hmm.
And I remember at the time I was shooting, and the same thing, I was trying to sell my work as well. I was trying to shoot for other people, meaning shoot for what I thought the judges would like, or shoot
Right.
what my potential clients would like or whatnot. And I didn't do very well. When one day I said, forget that. I'm going to do this for myself. I'm going to shoot what I like to do, what's interesting to me. And I will tell you, that's the day that my photography changed radically. Everybody started liking my photography more. I was able to sell more of my work because I was really, shooting what I was passionate about, really what I was interested in. It wasn't a quote unquote job. I wasn't shooting for anybody else. And since then, I really have not shot for anybody else. Even assignments that, I've turned down many, many assignments that just were not something I wanted to do. The only assignments I've ever taken are assignments that, something that I would do on my own. That the assignment just made it that much easier for me to do because someone was footing the bill.
Right.
But yeah, so I would always say, just shoot your passion, do what you like to do.
Boom, value bombs everywhere. I mean, that right there is the aha moment, or one of them for sure. So I'm going to brush by that question because that was just perfect answer. That, finding it, doing it for you was the important part. If we do it for other
Yes.
people, photo world, the problem is we go out, we look at other people's work, we get inspired, and then we say, that's effective, that's successful. I'm going to shoot for that, and I will have the same success and respect, but you're behind. At that point, you're looking at what's already been done and you're not going to be able to keep up. So shoot for you, and it's going to turn out being authentic and genuine. And also, it'll keep you happy doing what you do. We have this
Yes.
obscure word of passion. It's really hard to define it, but it's the drive that comes behind it, the inspiration you get from everything around you, and being happy doing what you do. I mean, that's what passion really boils down to. I think this is just brilliant, all coming out here all at once. Juan, thank you for bringing this to Photo World. Can you
Good.
share a moment where you kind of had an I made it moment as a photographer? Maybe there's not just one, it might have been your first publication or something like that, but something that stood out along the way as this, validation that, yes, I'm making it as a photographer.
Well, I think a lot of us have those, all the time, or we've never had like the aha moment. Every day I'm in wonder that I've actually do what I do for a living.
Hmm.
I'm grateful for it. I find myself incredibly fortunate. So it's hard for me to say there was a made it moment. I think that it goes back to that passion. To me, yeah, I mean, I've had some great assignments. I've had some incredible sales on some of my images. I've been used in incredible venues or incredible experiences. I've had some of my images printed, about what? Let me think about that. About 10 stories tall on the side of a building. I've had very world famous people use my images for the covers on their albums. Personally, they don't make it as, it's not a moment that I feel like I made it. To me, the moments I feel like I made it is when I visualize an image that I want to make and I go and I make the image. And it's never exactly what you think it was, but it's, has the essence of what you were shooting for. And for me, I made it as a photographer. I guess more, and I'm not, this sounds kind of froofy, right? Sounds kind of like, here's an artist talking about this high level artist stuff. I've never considered myself an artist from that perspective, but it's more about, my subject. It's more about what it is that I'm trying to capture. So it's not, for me personally, it's not so much on the business side of it. It's more on the photography side of it. Is like, wow, I'm amazed every time that I can make the image that I envisioned in the end. Because, as we all are, a lot of us will go out and we kind of think, oh, I'm going to go to this particular location and spending thousands of dollars to go there, as a nature photographer. And, you have this fear of failure that you're going to come back, you're going to get nothing. And then when you're there and you're like, wow, I can actually pull this off. And I have these moments all the time. It's like, wow, I can actually make this happen. I surprise myself all the time.
Good. I'm going to use that inspiration because nature was my original interest in photography. It never talked back to me, and it was really easy to work with in that way. Very difficult to photograph for sure.
Right.
But I've been away from that for years now, doing a lot of portraiture and weddings, things that way, commercial work. But I'm going to be taking a nice big trip to Colorado and doing a big hike and a summit. And I'm like, all right, this is a good opportunity to get some landscapes. And I'm kind of going into it the same way. Like, I hope I'm not setting my expectations too high. We'll see what comes out of it. But
well, I mean, the way I always look at it is, and I think this has always made it easier for me, is if I make one image a day that I would be proud to frame and display anywhere, I consider the day a success. Just one.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, that's the level. I mean, looking at it from a portrait or a wedding or commercial photography, that would not work. But from a nature photography, for me, if I get one image a day, I'm very happy. Oftentimes I'll get more than one, but if I make one, I'm happy. So I guess I set my expectations kind of low.
Well, one a day in the digital world would be amazing. I know Ansel Adams said if you can get 12 images a year, you are a success. I mean, he was working with one a month. It was a different time, different medium then, but still same kind of concept. Don't be outrageous saying, I'm going to go shoot this job and get, 30 amazing portfolio images. You wouldn't want that anyways. You wouldn't want to have the same repetition.
Right. And it's funny because you may get asked the same questions. A lot of people ask me that is, how many keepers do you get a day, when you're out in the field? Mm-hmm. And I say, to me, I'm shooting for one keeper a day when I'm out in the field. That's it. If I make more than that, that's a bonus.
Nice. Yeah. Well, Juan, during your photography career so far, what is the best advice you've ever received?
I think that, going back to what I said earlier, is really that, shoot for yourself, shoot for your passion, shoot for what you want to do. I think that makes everything else much easier to deal with. It makes it, fun. If I were, for example, I just came back from a trip to northern Alaska. I was out there for about 5 days, kind of scouting out an area, looking for specific subjects. And, if I didn't do this because I love doing it, I would have, I would have been so depressed. I would have been, it's not something I'd want to keep doing. I wouldn't want to go out there, being under rain, in the cold, and driving on rutted roads, driving over, 600 miles in 3 days, none of these things, or taking 26 hours to get back home. On 5 different flights, to get back home. I just can't stress that enough, is actually doing what you love. To me, all these other hardships kind of more than made up by those experiences that I had out there. And even if I hadn't made any images, the experience that I had was just so amazing that it would have made everything else well worth it. So, going back to what I said earlier, is really that best advice is actually shooting what you love, not shooting for other people, but shooting for yourself.
Wow. Yeah. I mean, when you can cancel out the pain of 26-hour flight time and change your flight, oh my gosh. When you can cancel that out, then you are doing what you love. So photo world, take a long trip somewhere and see if you can balance it out with the images you're making. So Juan, if you had to start your photography all over, you have the same gear and the same knowledge that you currently have today, but you have no business tomorrow. What would you do first when you wake up to get your new photography business started?
Well, I think nowadays it would be totally different than it was when I started, right? Nowadays, it's all about, social media, getting out there, right. Connecting with people, getting your voice out there. And, I'm asked this question, like you said earlier, all the time is, how do I get into this? I'm not a big social media person. It's not that I'm, antisocial or anything. It's just I'd rather spend time doing other stuff. Right. But I do a bit of sharing on Facebook and on Twitter and Google Plus and whatnot. But today I would say that would be a big focus, is really starting to sharing my work out there as much as possible through those mediums, because that's how you're going to get noticed. That's how you're going to get clients. Today, I mean, you hear about stories of people, being discovered, so to speak, through Instagram or, right. Through Facebook, whatnot. Some of the biggest sales I've ever done were because someone saw my images on Flickr For example, they saw my image, they were able to determine really easily that that image was mine and find out who I was so they could contact me and buy the images for their work as well. So I would definitely work really hard if I were starting over again to really do a impressive, as much as impressive job as I could do on social media. And one of the things I tell people too when they're working, especially on such public spaces, is share only your best work. I only share online my absolute best work, and that's why I'm not sharing images, 5 images a day
Right.
or images all the time. It's because I'm very, very picky about what I share online. Um, so that's really what I would do is concentrate on my work, make sure I get the best work that I possibly can make, and then share that as much as possible online. And share my knowledge, not just my images, but share my knowledge as well. Because a lot of people like to hear. Everybody likes to look at beautiful images, but when they come with good advice and good instruction, it's that much more appreciated. And people pay attention.
Yeah, and to that end, and to take it a step further with the social media connection, it's not only for getting clients or getting noticed to get your work out there. It's to get the network in place. I mean, that's the way of the world today, and it's a great resource to get connected with those in your industry. And to that end, there, Juan, do you have an app or an internet resource that you think Photo World could benefit from knowing about?
Well, I think a lot of it is, especially if you're starting out, is getting honest feedback on your work. And that's one of the hardest things to get online is getting honest feedback on your work. A lot of places tend to be like, "Oh, great, that looks awesome," and that's nice for stroking your ego, but it doesn't do you any good for for really improving your photography, learning what you're doing right and what you're doing wrong. So, what I would do is a couple of things I would do. I would try to find spaces online for your industry or the type of photography that you do, where you can get honest and a straight feedback and criticism on your work, so you can actually improve and see what you're doing right, what you're doing wrong. And that's going to vary obviously depending on what type of photography you do. If you're into nature, you would go to naturescapes.net. If you do weddings, you'd go somewhere else. If you go into sports photography, you go to sports shooters and whatnot. So try to find that. And then the other thing is to try to find a mentor, someone that can actually help you with your photography, both on aesthetic perspective, but also technically, and if you can, even from the business side.
Really good resources and ideas of, finding the niche markets for your industry, because we can put it out there, but then you're spreading yourself too thin. So find a Facebook group that follows what you're doing instead of just being another community to be a part of. Because if you're spending so much time on that, again, Photo World, you're putting 80% of your business time or your time into your business. Don't waste it on avenues that aren't going to benefit you or apply to your industry.
Right. And don't confuse, like I was saying, ego stroking with honest feedback and criticism, because
Exactly.
you can get the ego stroking on Facebook really easy. Just post some image, especially, and you'll get people saying, "Oh, that looks great," or you get the thumbs up or whatnot. That again, that's nice, but it's just doesn't help you grow as a photographer.
Right. Exactly. So as a wildlife and nature photographer, I'm curious what your go-to would be for this question. Other than our camera body, because we all definitely need that, what is one piece of gear that you could not live without?
And that would be easy too. It'd be my tripod. I shoot, I want to say 90% of my images with a tripod. Things are changing a little bit now. My favorite lens is my 500 millimeter lens. Now, this lens weighs over 8.5 pounds.
Right.
It's huge. And you can't handhold that for very long. And especially in low light, you can't handhold and get the right shutter speeds. So the tripod is essential for me. Nowadays, we're starting to see with, the way sensors are going, and they've been improving so much, I'm starting to shoot, I would say probably a little less with a tripod. I'm able to shoot more handheld with other kinds of lenses. For example, some of the shorter zoom lenses are getting so good that the quality is improving tremendously. They're still not as good as a good prime lens,
Right.
but so I'm not depending on my tripod as much as I used to, but it's still very, very important to me. I don't go anywhere without my tripod. I always use my tripod. Because I'm always, I'm never shooting in the middle of the day. I'm always shooting when the light is low. So my shutter speed, my ISO, even though I may bump it up to 400, 800, I'm still going to have slow shutter speed. So I need that tripod to stabilize my lens.
Photo World, did you hear that little sneak in? Always shooting when the light is low, which really turns into always shooting when the light is beautiful. So I mean, that's just a nice little takeaway to grab there. Juan, what kind of tripod do you use? Do you have a particular brand you're dedicated to?
Yeah, I mean, as a professional, quote unquote professional wildlife photographer, the equipment to me is super important. I want equipment that's going to last, that's going to work, that is not going to break down on me easily. So I use equipment from Really Right Stuff. They make possibly the world's best tripods, also the world's most expensive tripods. But when it's a tool, and a tripod is something I'm going to use for 10 years or more, it's actually not that expensive. It's actually cheaper than going through a number of cheaper tripods over that same period of time.
Right.
So if I'm looking at this as a long-term investment, I'm not at all shy about spending the money when I need the right tool for the job. And the Really Right Stuff, like I said, they make the best camera support systems, and the tripods are just outstanding. The ball heads, everything that they make is top notch.
Yeah, and not to mention that you're putting, $8, $10, $14,000 lenses and the camera, on top of this thing. You want to know it's going to be your rock.
Right. I mean, that's a great point. If you have, like you said, $15,000 worth of equipment, you don't want to put that in a $300 tripod. You want to, my tripod, with the ball head is about $1,500. And so it's very expensive. But if it's the right tool for the job, especially to keep that $15,000 investment steady, it's very important.
Right. In the business world, and all things considered, it's the longevity, it ends up being a fraction. It's just tough at the time. But Photo World, It's good to know that there are many professionals out there who believe the same thing. Don't get a cheap UV filter for your expensive lens. I mean, you're just degrading your beautiful glass for no reason. Spend the extra, $200-$300 for those really high-end UV filters to make sure it's on par, just for that, security. Or if you're doing a polarizer, put the investment in your gear, because that is what your business is thriving on.
Well, yeah. I mean, that's a great point, because I see so many people. I teach a lot of workshops around the country and around the world, and I will have people in workshops with a $2,000 lens and then a $45 filter in front of it. Mm-hmm. Guess what? I mean, you spent all that, your hard-earned money on a high-quality lens. Why are you going to degrade the quality by putting in a cheap substandard filter on? Don't do that. I personally don't shoot with any filters. I use a lens hood. The lens hoods, do a great job of protecting front element, and they serve a couple of other purposes. But if you're going to use a filter, don't skimp out. Get the best that you can. I mean, and if it means you have to save for a while, do that.
Exactly. And we're about to wrap it up here for our interview. But before we go, can you please share with Photo World one parting piece of guidance, and then the best way that we can get in touch or follow along with you, whether it's your website or your podcast or some sort of social media, and then we'll say goodbye.
Yeah. Well, it's funny because, this sort of piece of guidance that I give to people, it's very specific to nature photographers. When you're talking about like yourself, a commercial or wedding photographer, you're always making your images, meaning that you're out and you're positioning people in the right place. You're making them look in the right direction, kind of pose and all that kind of stuff. People that do nature work oftentimes don't think about that. Don't think about making the images. They go to a place, they stand there, they lift the camera, and they snap a picture. And I call that taking a picture. That's not making a picture. And in nature, yes, I cannot tell that grizzly bear to move over here and do this and pose in that way. But there are certain things you can do in order to compose your image. And that means is that instead of having them move, you have to move. And you have to change your perspective to your subject. So what I'm trying to say is make your image as opposed to take an image. And the way that you make that image is by positioning yourself and changing your perspective between you and your subject in the background to position that subject in the best way possible. Since you can't get them to move, you have to move yourself. Don't just take an image, actually make an image. And the best way to reach me, by far the best way, is to go to my website. And my website, I have links to my workshops and my online classes and podcasts and all that kind of stuff. And that's juanpons.org. That's JUANPONS.org.
Awesome. And Photo World, you know well, you can find Juan's links, including the website and social media and the podcast, workshop, everything there will be on the show notes page if you're not able to get there directly somehow, over at takeandtalkpics.com. Type in Juan in the search bar. His show notes will pop right up, and you'll have all the resources right there that we've talked about and how to get in touch. But Juan, I cannot thank you enough for your time today in sharing such great value. Photo World thanks you, and happy shooting.
Well, thanks, Rob. Thanks for having me, and I look forward to this episode coming out.
Photo World, are you looking for a way to make your images pop to that next level? Head to takeandtalkpics.com, go to the affiliates page, and from there you will see Free Vault photography products. We have worked out a special deal with Free Vault photography products, so you can get 15% off your next purchase. Just enter Take and Talk 15. Spell it out, Take and Talk, then the number 15. Photo World, takeandtalkpics.com. Thank you again for joining us today, and we really appreciate you stopping by. Make sure you share this with your friends and photo family out there. We'll see you next time. This is Rob Kruger. Happy shooting.